The King's Avatar, Chapter 21. The day is already bright again. Yeshu decisively renounced it, so Seven Fields and the others accepted it. They were all old friends and they split up the drops harmoniously. The spider venom would be sold for money, it didn't matter who chose it. After selling it, they would split up the money again. The chestnut boots was an ordinary blue equipment, so everyone carelessly rolled for it. In the end, Sunset Clouds beautifully dispatched it with a perfect 100 points. As for the mahogany tachi, according to their future classes, it would go either to Sunset Clouds or Sleeping Moon. Sunset Clouds had just grabbed the chestnut boots. Although the value of it couldn't be compared to the value of the mahogany tachi, he still happily chose to renounce it. Sleeping Moon held the mahogany tachi both excitedly and somewhat strangely. The first spider cave clear, and now the first spider emperor kill. Both times granted them huge experience rewards. Lord Grim had already risen to level 12, while Seven Fields and the others would certainly level up after this dungeon. Killing the normal boss was too easy for them, and they quickly dispatched it. After clearing the dungeon, Sleeping Moon felt conflicted again. He had originally planned on leaving the party after this run, but he had just obtained the mahogany tachi. Taking equipment and then leaving didn't seem like good manners.
If I leave, no good. If I don't leave, well, Seven Fields had already told me to get out. If I don't leave, then I'd lose phase 2.
Fortunately, Seven Fields was a good friend and took the initiative to call out to him. It seemed like what he said in the dungeon was said as a joke. And so the things ended like this. With Lord Grim as the leader, everyone entered the spider cave once again. Like Sleeping Moon, Blue River and his group from Bluebrook Guild were also conflicted and depressed. They weren't the first to clear the spider cave, and of the 3 hidden bosses, 2 of them had already been stolen. This was their 4th time entering the dungeon. In the end, they still hadn't met one. Right as they were bitterly pressing on, another system announcement popped up. The last of the 3 hidden bosses in Spider Cave, the Spider Warrior, had been killed. The first to clear the Spider Warrior were members from one of the 3 great guilds, Herb Garden, and the previous hidden boss had been cleared by members from the other great guild, Tyrannical Ambition. From this, it could be seen that the 3 great guilds should have been evenly matched, but this time that guy, Lord Grim, had stolen it away. Lord Grim currently held the most records for the first clears, 3 times. Furthermore, his party that followed him had stolen away 2 spots on the first clear leaderboards in the level 10 stage of the game. It made the Bluebrook Guild appear as if they had little face left. As for hidden bosses, they could only blame their bad luck on not meeting them, but when they thought about those 10 seconds they were off by for the first dungeon clear, they could still only throw a blood. All of the first clears were gone. Blue River and the others fell into despair.
Where did this Lord Grim come from? Have that village's people pay attention!
Blue River said somewhat nervously. That Yeshu, who they had an extremely bad impression of, was actually in high spirits. Leaving and entering the dungeon again and again, he was awfully busy. The opening of the 10th server busily and hurriedly passed just like this. Some people were happy, while some were worried. When Chengguo woke up from her sleep, it was already 11 o'clock, close to noon. She was usually disciplined and rarely slept in. Only yesterday was the opening of the 10th server. Following that guy and watching the excitement made her sleep in extremely late. Chengguo calculated the time and found that she had been sleeping for 8 hours. Satisfied, she stretched and climbed out of her bed. Chengguo lived in the internet cafe. To be more precise, she slept in the small room on the 2nd floor, in the same area as Yeshu. Compared to the newcomer Yeshu, Chengguo was extremely familiar with the environment. She had grown up in the happy internet cafe, eating, sleeping and working there. During her time as a student, instead of returning home like everyone else, she squeezed into the internet cafe. For this reason, there were few misunderstandings. Happy Internet Cafe was her home. Chengguo had a deep impression of it ever since she was little. Because her parents were like this too, she carefully managed this internet cafe as if it were family. When the internet cafe was extremely small, Chengguo was also extremely small. Nowadays, her home had grown extremely large. But as for her family, only she had remained. That year, at the time of her college entrance exam, Chen-Guo's father suddenly passed away from heart disease. Chen-Guo didn't have a mother, at least she had no impression of one. After arranging her father's funeral, her family relatives discussed how they would handle the internet cafe. When they began talking about what they should do with Chen-Guo without even thinking, Chen-Guo threw away her college admission notice and took over the internet cafe. Her friends and family looked astonished. She resembled her father and continued to manage the internet cafe and look after the home. In a flash, 9 years had already passed. The current Chen-Guo had enough money to buy herself a comfortable living place, but she never had these sorts of thoughts. She felt extremely satisfied living in the internet cafe. In the internet cafe, she always felt steady and serene. Perhaps this was the feeling of family. Even though she was only one person, she never felt lonely. "Today's weather is good." Standing next to the window, Chen-Guo looked outside. The silver-white world made the sunlight all the more dazzling. "Father should go bait in it too," Chen-Guo joked. Picking up the picture of her and her dad, she put the picture on the windowsill. After putting on her clothes and washing her face, Chen-Guo magically and happily slipped out of the living room. Seeing that the storage room was already open, she slipped in her head and took a glimpse, but she didn't see Yeshu. "Where'd he go?" Chen-Guo muttered. Pulling open the door, Chen-Guo immediately entered her internet cafe. The internet cafe was already filled to the capacity, all because of the opening of the Glorious Dance server. After the all-night party, the early morning party immediately followed. Every screen had scenes of glory. Every person wore headphones and laughed or raged into their microphone depending on the circumstance. Chen-Guo went down the stairs to the front desk. She asked the little sister receptionist on duty where Yeshu went. The little sister pointed to the deep in the smoking area. "He's still playing!" Chen-Guo said with great alarm. She quickly walked over there. The smoking area was a place filled with foul black smoke. Yeshu was located in the middle of the main disaster area. Chen-Guo furrowed her eyebrows and tried to wave away the smoke. She rushed close to Yeshu and lifted his headphones. "Still playing? Are you crazy?" Yeshu turned around at lightning speed and nodded his head, saying, "Morning." He immediately turned back and continued making pat-pat sounds on his keyboard. Chen-Guo swept her eyes over the screen. "Spider Cave!" "Yep." "What level?" 17. Chen-Guo was startled. She carefully looked at the screen and saw Lord Grimm experience bar. The bar was almost full. After this dungeon, he would level up to 18. At this moment, there was still 20 minutes before 12 o'clock. To reach level 18 in 12 hours, that had to be a new record. Even though the system announcement didn't have this sort of statistics, many players on the forum used these numbers to prove just how amazing the leveling speed was. Chen-Guo glanced again and saw clearly Yeshu's teammate. "Sleeping Moon?" Chen-Guo suddenly felt that she had seen this name before. Thinking carefully, she immediately recalled. "Wasn't this person slandering you last night?" Chen-Guo pointed to Sleeping Moon on the party list. "Yep." "Then why are you in a party with him?" Chen-Guo couldn't understand. "Because of his slandering, I couldn't form a party with anyone," Yeshu said. "Who asked you for this reason?" Chen-Guo grew angry. "For someone as mature as me, how could I be mad at his slandering?" Yeshu laughed. Chapter 22. Yeshu's Retirement 1. Chen-Guo still didn't understand. Even if Yeshu didn't mind, why would the other person accept into the party? What exactly happened? I reckoned that when they first admitted me in, they had a plot set up for me. But after seeing that I played well, they felt that I would be helpful to them, so they let me go, Yeshu said. "Then you just happily worked for them without any benefits?" Chen-Guo felt extremely angry on Yeshu's behalf. "It's nothing, it's okay." While Yeshu said this, on the screen, a lens flashed by killing off the Spider Lord that had been surrounded by 5 of them. Chen-Guo saw a bunch of system messages typed out neatly in the chat box. The party members, Seven Fields, Sleeping Moon, Suns and Clouds, and Drifting Water, all chose to renounce the equipment dropped from the Spider Lord.
What is the meaning of this?
I was very helpful to them, so they forced me to choose which equipment to take first. There's really nothing I can do. While Yeshu said this, he decisively chose to renounce him. Through these priority picks, he had already collected a set of blue equipment long ago. But these guys still wanted him to take a look first. Chen Guo was dumbstruck. She felt that what Yeshu described was too modest. How was this working for them? Wasn't he the boss? Only the core of the party was qualified to have priority picks after finishing a boss. Not only that, but the precondition was that they were all a group of friends that recognized each other. Only then would they let a player who did the most work have priority. But these party members? Before she had slept, it seemed like they were enemies. When she woke up, how did they all suddenly become his little brothers?
Can you explain to me how exactly this happened?
Chen Guo wouldn't drop this matter and would ask until results came forth. It's because I helped them a lot.
How much?
I carried them through the Spider Cave and Spider Emperor first clears.
You completed 3 first clears in one night.
Chen Guo was shocked. She had played Chasing Haze for 5 years, but she didn't have a single first clear under her name. He only played throughout the night and the morning, and not even 12 hours, but obtained 3 first clear. This was too dazzling. Good luck, Yeshu said. He lazily stretched and stood up from his chair. The party members on the screen had already logged out. A faint farewell could be heard from his headphones. Yeshu took the headphones from Chen Guo's hands. He put it up to his mouth, shouting, "See you later!" and then logged out of the game. I'm so sleepy. I'm going to sleep, Yeshu said.
Do you want something to eat before sleeping?
When Chen Guo said this, she sized up Yeshu. Truthfully, when she looked at Yeshu's face, she couldn't see any signs of the word sleepy. This person had pulled an all-nighter plus a morning. He didn't look a little listless, but the problem was that yesterday, when they had first met, he looked depressed, as if he were half dead. She really couldn't tell that he had been wounded by the weapon of no sleep. No need. After I sleep, then I'll eat. Yeshu shut down the computer and ran. Chen Guo had given him the keys to the second-floor storage room last night. After opening the door to that pitifully tiny storage room, he covered his head with a pillow and fell asleep. As for this room, it actually suited sleeping during the day very nicely. When the door was closed, the small light that slipped through the window couldn't disturb him at all. Yeshu fell asleep quickly. He slept extremely well. When he awoke, the day turned dark again. It was hard to imagine that someone who had just recently experienced such a great rise and fall could sleep so simply. Sitting up from his bed, Yeshu didn't turn on the lights. He lit up a cigarette, and after quietly smoking it, he got up and left the room. The doors to the 2 small bedrooms were all locked up. Yeshu knew that one of these rooms was occupied by Chen Guo, and the other was occupied by a young lady named Tang Ro. He heard that Tang Ro was a long-time employee at Happy Internet Cafe. She had already worked there for almost 2 years, but in the past few days she had taken a break. As for other Internet Cafe employees that needed a living place, they lived in the nearby neighborhood. Chen Guo had rented an apartment for all of the employees to live in. Yeshu's place was a place for waiting until a vacancy opened up. Chen Guo indicated that as soon as a person stopped working, he would have the opportunity to obtain his own bed. When he went to the bathroom at a convenient time, Yeshu saw a sticky note on the mirror. Bored, he took a glance and discovered that the sticky note was actually written to him. Chen Guo had already prepared a towel and a toothbrush for him. Yeshu tore down the sticky note and was somewhat at a loss. Mainly, he didn't think that the boss was so attentive. As for whether he was moved, this type of trivial matter wouldn't be enough. Grateful would be more accurate. After tidying the towel and the toothbrush, Yeshu left and looked around for a bit. It was already 9 o'clock. He hadn't eaten food all day. Leaving the small inner rooms, he entered the internet cafe and felt a little abnormal. Even though the second floor was a more costly, higher quality area, it was a little too empty. Yeshu headed downstairs baffled. In the end, unexpectedly, the further he went, the darker it became. The internet cafe's first floor actually had no lights turned on. Did something happen? Yeshu glanced around at a loss. He discovered that although the first floor lights weren't turned on, there were a lot of people, so much so that there were quite a few trying to squeeze in. To a wall in the south, a 200-inch diagonal projection hung high up. The projector streamed as seen, and the sound echoed throughout the internet cafe. Everyone was extremely quiet. Whether they were sitting at a computer or standing in a passageway, it seems as if they had all forgotten what the purpose of the internet cafe was and treated it as a movie theater, quietly gazing at the projection. Yeshu also quickly heard a voice commentating on the scene. 5 words that he couldn't have been more familiar with. Ye Chu, one autumn leaf. The projection that was being streamed, to his shock, was a movie segment on the history of his professional career in glory. The commentator also movingly described a series of accomplishments he had gained in his career in glory. 3-time league champion, 3-time MVP, 2-time rising star, 1-time one-hit one-kill. No matter if it was his team or other players, Ye Chu was at the peak of the Glory's professional alliance. He was the goal of every professional Glory player. Next, let's all commemorate the battle god One Autumn Leaf that Ye Chu controlled through this series of marvelous images. The commentator used a downcast, sorrowful tone to cast. On the projection, invincible images of battle god One Autumn Leaf began showing on the screen. Before, any picture would have made the crowd go wild with excitement. But right now, the internet cafe was silent. There was no yelling or cheering. Everyone just silently looked at the pictures as they flashed one by one. They knew, from today onwards, everything there would be a thing of the past. On that day at noon, Excellent Era Club called for a news conference and announced the retirement of their team captain, Ye Shu. This ever mysterious expert didn't even participate in his own retirement news conference. Everyone only saw the Excellent Era manager take out Yeshu's signature on the agreement stating his retirement. The Excellent Era manager soon after proclaimed that the retired Yeshu had tactfully declined the club's other position and left the Excellent Era club by himself. The screen continuously flickered. Duels, slaughters, records. The commentator timely made progress and gradually made his way to Ye Chu and Excellent Era's dismal situation. Within the internet cafe crowd, faint sobbing could be heard. Chapter 23. Ye Chu's Retirement 2. The club was able to invite Sun Xiang, this type of new generation expert that news helped uplift the mood. But the king of the first generation, he could only endure the wearing of time alone and sadly depart. He walked free and easy, but in his heart was absolutely unhappy. He still wanted to fight. He still hadn't thought that his professional career has reached its end. But he already had no choice. Accept the conditions and become the club's training partner. This would be a very humiliating choice. But Ye Shu could see through the tricks. He knew very clearly that the club was certain that he wouldn't resign to this sort of humiliation and would definitely choose to leave. This was why they had given him the choice. If he had unexpectedly accepted it, then the club would look for other methods to forcefully make him leave. Although this was extremely cruel, from a business standpoint, this was the only choice. Because of the Alliance's commercialization, the Alliance had already turned merciless. Ye Shu hadn't reached retirement age yet. In fact, the club also understood this point. Their option of retirement was their way of proving this. They not only wanted to get rid of his baggage, but also feared that a competitor would take his chance to grab him and easily become strong. They would rather eliminate him than make him their future enemy. Thus, forcing Ye Shu into retirement was a result of their thinking. They undoubtedly succeeded. Ye Shu saw through this, but could only follow their script and leave. A life and death struggle? He didn't want that, because he still had another road to follow. Retiring for a year, this wasn't necessarily a bad situation. Going back a step opened up boundless opportunities. Although this step was a bit big. Let's call it a day. When the screen rolled over this caption, Yeshu finally couldn't watch it any longer. This sort of program deliberately tried to stir up emotions, making some of the people in the internet cafe directly burst into tears. But the sad, reminiscing, miserable feelings among everyone, who could compare to him? Yeshu squeezed out of the crowd. He stood outside at the entrance and let out a sigh. But to his surprise, he heard a sobbing sound spread to his ears. He turned around and looked. Unexpectedly, it was Chang'o hiding alone outside the door. Her eyes were so crystal bright. They both saw each other. Not greeting didn't seem like a good choice, so Yeshu called out. "Boss, you're crying?"
You beast! You don't even have this sort of feeling,
Chang'o said. Too much. If it wasn't held back, wouldn't it have burst out by now? Yeshu said.
Go die!
Chang'o cursed.
Do you have any paper?
Yeshu searched his body from head to toe and then said, "Will a cigarette case work?" I'll go get some. Without waiting for the boss's response, Yeshu promptly ran back to the internet cafe to look. The sound of weeping grew loud. Both males and females cried. This time Yeshu couldn't hold back the sadness in his heart. He knew exactly who these people were crying for. Thinking of this, his eyes couldn't help but begin to tear up. Yeshu hastily went to the front desk and asked for a bag of paper napkins. Rushing out, he stuffed them into Chang'o's hands. His back against the wall, he fished out a cigarette and lit it.
What are you doing? Are you going to cry too? Do you need some paper?
Behind him, Chang'o seemed to sense it. How could it be? How could I cry? Yeshu conveniently turned his body and puffed out a mouthful of smoke towards Chang'o's face. The tears that had just been wiped away reappeared because of the smoke. Chang'o waved her hands to get rid of the smoke. Unexpectedly, she didn't say anything and stuffed the paper napkins back into Yeshu's hands. She turned around and went back into the internet cafe. Yeshu leaned against the wall and silently smoked his cigarette. He took out a napkin and then wiped away some mucus. He then walked towards the small restaurant nearby. After Yeshu, with a toothpick in his mouth, ate his fill and returned to the internet cafe, the special commemoration movie of Yeshu had ended. But the atmosphere inside the internet cafe still hadn't cleared yet. Many people's eyes were still red. Most of the people there were like this, so there was nothing to be embarrassed about. On the contrary, people like Yeshu, who held a calm expression on his face, were easily viewed as heartless beasts by everyone else. If you didn't explain that you didn't play Glory, then you would feel quite embarrassed with greeting others. He didn't know where Boss Chen went, so Yeshu went to the front desk to ask around. Mainly to ask about how this special broadcast came to be. It turned out that whenever a Glory competition took place, the internet cafe would put on this sort of special live stream. Originally, there wasn't a competition today, but for this type of big event like Yeshu's retirement, the esports stream would also quickly make this type of special program. As a result, the Happy Internet Cafe would also show the stream as if it were a competition. In the past, when the competition stream ended, everyone would be burning with anger and rush to play the game with unprecedented enthusiasm. It directly caused the Internet Cafe to be packed with people, and the revenue that day would rise sky high. But today, after this stream, the Glory players were all in a rare gloomy mood. Some even left at once to return home and cry into their pillows. Some went to the 3 or 5 of their good friends and drank together. Of course, there were people that continued to play games in the internet cafe. After all, not everyone was a fan of Yeshu. There were always a few people that didn't care about his retirement. But the overall atmosphere did infect them. Although they continued to play, they did feel somewhat listless. The entire internet cafe seemed very quiet. If it were an ordinary day, all the Glory players would definitely wear their headphones or shout with energy. The cafe would be bustling with noise and excitement. Ye Shu was currently thinking of what to do when he saw Chen Guo come down from the second floor. He hurried over and called out, "Boss, do I officially start working today?"
Okay,
Chen Guo said.
but when you're working, you can't just casually sit down somewhere. You have to keep watch at this counter here.
Can I play games?
You can. Just use that station.
Chen Guo pointed to the computer that was currently being used to watch K-dramas by the little sister at the counter. Can I smoke? Ye Shu asked. Chen Guo looked him in the eye and helplessly nodded her head.
You can smoke, but when I come over in the morning, there can't be any smoke smell or cigarette ash.
Understood, Ye Shu said. Soon after, Chen Guo taught Ye Shu how to turn on and shut down the computers for guests. In the end, she said,
Truthfully, at this time, most of the guests pull all-nighters. At 11 o'clock, all the guests should have arrived, and their computers will automatically shut down at 7 in the morning. There's really not much for you to do. Just you being there is good enough. If the guests have any issues, they'll ring a bell.
What if a computer malfunctions? Ye Shu asked. Although he wasn't computer illiterate, he didn't have the skill to fix a broken computer.
Restart it,
Chen Guo said. Ye Shu wiped away his sweat. And if restarting doesn't work?
Switch computer stations.
Ye Shu started sweating again. Right when he was about to ask again, Chen Guo had already said,
You're on the night shift. There will be plenty of open computers, so you can just choose a random one. But write down what the computer problem was and look for a technician to come and look at it the next day.
Okay, understood. Ye Shu nodded his head. Chapter 24 Dungeon Record. Chen Guo, who had just recently wiped away her tears from Ye Chu's retirement, now looked peaceful, as if nothing had happened. She carefully explained again the things Ye Shu needed to know, and then randomly found the station to play Glory. Ye Shu stood nearby and glanced a few times at her screen. He saw that Chen Guo had entered the arena and engaging in PK. But it was obvious that she had something else on her mind. While she PK'd, she repeatedly made several huge mistakes, the ones that all the low-skill players made. After losing 3 rounds, Chen Guo tapped her keyboard and logged out of the game. She turned her head and saw Ye Shu, who was standing around picking his teeth as if he had nothing to do. After glaring at him, she ran back to the second floor. Ye Shu looked at the time. There wasn't much time left until he had to start working at 11 o'clock. The little sister at the counter also grasped the time well. The K-drama had finished at perfect time. After the show finished, the time just happened to hit 11 o'clock. The little sister stood up and smiled towards Ye Shu.
Ready, yeah? Then I'm going now.
Go, go. Ye Shu had waited for the computer for a long time. The little sister wasn't the only employee finishing work at 11 o'clock. The daytime and evening time wouldn't be as empty as the all-night time. One person definitely was enough to take care of everyone. The internet cafe employees still weren't familiar with Ye Shu, but they all recognized him. They all politely waved goodbye and left one by one. The internet cafe turned exceptionally empty. Keyboard and mouse could be clearly heard. Compared to the excitement at last night's new server opening, the place had flipped into a completely different sight. Thinking that this was all because of his retirement announcement, Ye Shu softly let out a sigh and sat at the counter. Inserting his account card, he logged into the game. When he entered, he received several messages. Ye Shu opened them and looked. It was 7 Fields and his brothers lining up to greet him. "Brother Expert, you've come!" 7 Fields, Sunset Clouds, Drifting Water, the 3 all asked the same question, except for the Sleeping Moon. "Is everyone here?" Ye Shu responded to all 3 of them. "Oh, Sleeping Moon's gone." "Being difficult again?" Ye Shu thought of that little guy. No, he's not feeling too well. Today wasn't Ye Chu's retirement announcement. He really liked Ye Chu, so he's a bit depressed. He's not coming to play tonight," 7 Fields said. Ye Shu truly didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He didn't think that guy was actually one of his fans. If he let him know that he was Ye Chu and that he had despicably and shamelessly attacked his idol, he didn't know what the guy would think. If we're missing a person, then Spider Cave's hidden bosses won't be too easy to kill, Ye Chu said. Just randomly add someone? Sevenfield suggested. Why don't we go to the skeleton graveyard? Sure. Sevenfields immediately responded. The skeleton graveyard was a level 15 to 20 dungeon. Sevenfields and the others had thought of it long ago. They also hoped that Yeshu would lead them to grab a few more first clears again. But Yeshu's thoughts and requirements were different from theirs. Regarding first clearing the dungeon, this type of glory, Yeshu didn't care at all. In addition to be the first to clear, they had to always keep their levels at the top of standings. Yeshu had no way of doing this. It wasn't that his skill wasn't enough, it was that he didn't have enough time. In the morning, when he went offline, Lord Grim had been placed 5th in the 10 server level standings, but now? Yeshu opened up the standings and looked again. Lord Grim's name was no longer even there. The people placed at the very front were already level 22. Why? Because players from the big guilds were organized to level up crazily and grab first clears. An account would be used by 2 or 3 people, so the character would be online for 24 hours. They played using wheel tactics, making up for their lack of skills with hard work. No matter how great Yeshu's skill was, there was no way he could win against these players. Due to this reason, the rewards for first clears were only ordinary. Besides the nice-looking name, it reflected that these troops' leveling speed greatly surpassed their actual skill and strength. By comparison, the dungeon clearing records show a more accurate representation of skill and strength. This record used time as a measurement. At first, the system would set a time. If a team beat that time, then their time would be the new record. If it was beaten again, then it would switch again. This record breaking could be repeatedly done and the rewards were generous. It wasn't like those first clear records with little experience and gold. There was 100% chance of obtaining a purple equipment, while the other rewards were randomly given. This type of glory didn't exist in the beginner area because they would start only after the level 20 and higher dungeons. Yeshu looked and saw that the first level 20 Frost Forest clear had already been completed. The original system record had been broken too. Behind it were the number of times it had been broken. At the present, the record had been broken 3 times. The current record was set by Herb Garden team with 26:12:48 milliseconds at 18:23 in the afternoon. Yeshu scratched his head, a bit ashamed. He was a little fuzzy on the dungeon details, but he knew that this record would definitely be broken again. The highest level player was currently level 22, while the final record would usually be set by a party of level 25s. As long as a player in the party was over level 25, the dungeon record wouldn't count. Brother Expert, we already arrived at the skeleton graveyard. Sevenfield sent a message at this time. These brothers were still at the same level as when they went offline. It looked like they were like Yeshu and also slept during the day. Okay, I'll be there right away. Yeshu controlled Lord Grim to hurry over to skeleton graveyard. Normally they could have went to the dungeon as soon as they hit level 15, but upgrading Yeshu's myriad manifestation umbrella required a lot of strong spider silk. Yesterday, he made his demands clear with Sevenfields and the others. He meant that after hitting level 15, they could switch dungeons, but he wouldn't go. In the end, the 4 guys stayed behind too and followed Yeshu to the spider cave. Even after all this, he still didn't have enough strong spider silk. These materials had a 100% drop rate from the Spider Emperor, and the normal bosses only had a small chance. Yeshu and them bitterly cleared the dungeon 11 times. They met the hidden boss 3 times. One of them was the Emperor, which dropped 5 strong spider silk. The other 2 hidden bosses were spider warriors, which did not drop the material. And then from the other bosses he obtained another 7. In addition to the 4 he got from the first kill, he had 16 in total. Yeshu needed 40, so he was still missing 24. If they kept up with yesterday's pace, they would still need to do this for 2 more days. Yeshu calculated 7fields and the others had stayed with him in the spider cave the entire time and would soon reach level 18. When they reached level 20, they would be 5 levels above the spider cave. In Glory, 5 levels were always important thresholds, such as for equipment, skills and experience. If they exceeded the dungeon by 5 levels, then they would receive less experience. At that point, leveling would no longer be efficient. Yeshu was too embarrassed to bring 7 Fields and the other to Spider Cave again to do his labor. Relying on these guys to do my work isn't a good plan. I have to find another way. While Yeshu thought this, Lord Grim had already arrived at the skeleton graveyard. He found 7 Fields in the crowd and asked to join their party. After entering the party, 7 Fields sent another message. Do we still need another person? It's not necessary, Yeshu replied. Thinking again, Skeleton Graveyard had materials he needed too. He just didn't need them yet. I haven't used the Myriad Manifestation Umbrella for very long, but it's already become a burden. It isn't easy starting up again. Yeshu sighed and then entered the Skeleton Graveyard. Chapter 25. Did you hear what I said? Brother Expert, do you have any demands here? While Yeshu put on his headphones, he saw 7 Fields' message. I want the skeleton warrior sabers, Yeshu replied. Do you want to mendel sabers? 7 Fields was surprised. Right, Yeshu said. Oh, if you have demands, then let's not add anyone. It's just the 4 of us then. 7 Fields' words made sense, especially the part about demands. They would have to take a long time explaining it to the newly added person. Even then, the person might not trust them. Also, if you directly gave the party leader priority picks, then the stranger would just be scared away. Who would know whether you give them the portion of the fine loot or not? Thus, it was better with 4 friends. Okay. Yeshu also wanted to avoid this type of trouble. 7 Fields and the others all entered the dungeon and said together, Come on, hidden boss! Are you guys becoming addicted to killing hidden bosses? Yeshu laughed. The trio sent out a naughty ha-ha laughs. Ever since they followed Yeshu, they all had this thought towards hidden bosses. If there wasn't a hidden boss, then they would just roll through the dungeon, no pressure. Let's go, Yeshu said. Lord Grim once again swung out the battle lance and led the way. 7 Fields, sunset clouds, and drifting water skillfully tailed behind. Fine rain drizzled down on the skeleton graveyard. Dark green will-o'-wisps could be seen far and near. The sound effect was faint ghost cries. From time to time, 2 mournful groans would suddenly push forward, causing the scalps to tingle. No, it wasn't just his scalp that tingled. It seemed as if the wind were blowing right into his ears. Yeshu's mind was tough and unyielding. He determined that this wasn't a psychological effect, but something actually blowing. Although his hands didn't stop moving, his head subconsciously turned left and right. He saw a shining white face and a pair of black eyes stealthily staring at him without ever blinking. The cherry-red lips looked as if they would drip blood. Yeshu's left hand directly slapped the keyboard, and his character stopped. This time he had fully pressed 7 or 8 keys. In-game, Lord Grim looked as if he spasmed and made several mistakes. It was good that they were only fighting small monsters. 7 Fields and the others quickly rescued him. Brother Expert had never made any large mistakes yesterday. He just started playing today. How could he suddenly turn so foolish and start messing around? Could it be that something happened to the Expert? But they had just heard his voice. That's Brother Expert's voice. At this moment, Yeshu had already turned around and quickly moved to stabilize the situation. 7 Fields and the others relaxed and then heard Brother Expert say, Boss, you're staying up so late. Are you running around with a facial mask trying to be a white supergirl? What? 7 Fields was startled. A love affair, Drifting Waters privately messaged. The 3 immediately kept silent and held their headphones tight to their ear.
I can't sleep, so I came down to sit for a bit,
Chen-Guo said after taking off her mask. 7 Fields, move back. Drifting Water, take the lead. Sunset Clouds, pay attention to the 4 o'clock direction. Yeshu directed the battle. Chen-Guo quietly looked at Yeshu killing monsters and suddenly said, I feel that Yeshu should never retired. Agreed. Yeshu said.
It was only because his position was too high. As soon as the Excellentera had a problem, it would be pushed onto the leader,
Chen-Guo said. Oh?
I've watched all of the Excellentera battles. I feel that Ye Chu and the Battle God One Autumn Leaf aren't as strong as they were back in the days.
Yeshu was silent.
The current professional alliance has become more and more developed. Experts are everywhere. For example, Great Gunner, Sword Saint, King of Fighting, Magicians. These players aren't worse than Ye Chu, and their accounts are just as strong as One Autumn Leaf.
Still silent.
Nowadays, one person can no longer carry the team. But people always hoped that Ye Chu could still show his strength just like he did when he was in his glorious days. Their demands towards him were just too great,
Chen-Guo said. 7 Fields, turn back a bit. You're too far. Sunset Clouds, you and Drifting Water stand together. I can handle this side by myself. While Yeshu directed them, he went pop, pop, pop on the keyboard.
Oh, fuck you!
Chen-Guo grew furious. She got up and grabbed Yeshu's neck. While she violently shook his neck, she roared.
Did you even hear what I said? Did you hear what I said?
The internet cafe guests all trembled. Frequent customers snuck in a glance at that direction, wanting to see who dared to provoke Boss Chen-Guo. With this loud of a roar, today they were afraid someone was about to meet a tragic end. The headphones on Yeshu's head shook a few times and then fell off. Inside, a few dim trembling sounds from 7 Fields and the others muttered out, I heard. Even in this situation, Yeshu still maintained steady hands and persevered though. In-game, Lord Grim continued to perform perfectly, but his master, Yeshu, already had a hard time breathing and was about to be strangled to death. Right when Yeshu's tongue was about to fall off, Chen-Guo released her hands. Yeshu coughed loudly, but his gaze still hadn't shifted from the screen. He asked Chen-Guo,
What did you say?
While he quickly picked up his headphones, he shouted towards the headphones, 7 Fields back! Move back! After throwing his headphones on, his hands quickly returned to the keyboard. He didn't even have time to put them on properly. In the game, the 4 of them were currently battling a boss. They were originally missing a person. They needed Yeshu's Lord Grim. Chen-Guo saw that this guy wasn't mad at all.
Well, I can't just strangle him to death, can I?
Helpless, she sat back down. She turned on a computer in front of his station.
Play with me!
Yeshu turned his head and glanced. That's the server computer.
I'm the boss.
Yeshu had nothing to say. That rule had more power than the rule to never use the server computers. How do I play with you? Yeshu didn't turn his head to ask. He was currently fighting an intense battle with a boss.
I have an account in the 10 server too.
Chen-Guo fished out a card, waving it at Yeshu. In the end, Yeshu just went, oh, and still didn't turn around. Furious, Chen-Guo cursed.
I really should just strangle him to death and then dig a hole for him to be buried in.
Then first do the intro missions, Yeshu said.
I won't do the missions. Bring me to a dungeon.
Chen-Guo acted a bit rashly. She already decided that she would do the opposite of whatever Yeshu said. You're still level 1. How can I bring you to a dungeon? Yeshu said. Green Forest was the lowest level dungeon, level 5 to 10. If she wasn't level 5, then she couldn't enter it.
Think of something,
Chen-Guo said. Okay, let me think. Afterwards, his hands went pop-pop again. Suddenly, he quickly grabbed his headphones. Drifting Water, go back to your position. You're about to be surrounded. What happened to you guys? So many mistakes. After throwing down his headphones, he heard a few knuckle-cracking sounds from behind him. Chen-Guo grinded her teeth, asking,
Did you think of something?
Thought of one, Yeshu immediately said.
Oh!
Chen-Guo was astonished. This was something that simply wasn't possible under the system setup. How did he find a way? Don't think about the missions, just kill monsters until you're level 5, Yeshu said.
I'll kill you first!